in 1 Samuel 17 as we look at this one moment in the life of David where he defeats the giant that has been intimidating his people. One of the most often maybe overlooked aspects of this account is the influence of the crowd. If you read the account, for 40 days the entire Israelite army was gathered together, and for 40 days the giant taunted and mocked them and challenged them, and nobody would act. A lot of studies have been done over the years in modern history about the influence of hive mind or group think. Maybe you've heard it as mob mentality. But what we know today is that when human beings gather together in groups, when they move in groups, when they act in groups, sometimes they will behave differently than they would as individuals. There's something that happens to us when we are in a group of people, and it is possible for us to be influenced by them and do things or not do things that we would normally do or not do. And I think that's what's happening here in this account. We have this entire army, and on day one, to see Goliath was probably such a shock. And as a group, the whole army of Israel, hundreds of men, maybe as close to up to 3,000 men, they were just shocked. And as a unit, as a group, as one mind, they all said, "No thank you, we're not fighting that guy." And then it happened again and again and again and again, until on day 40 when David shows up and he hears the challenge, he hears the mocking, and he decides to do something. He had not been influenced by the group. And it makes me wonder if David had been there on day one, would this account look and sound differently? Would David have ended it right there on day one, or would David have been influenced by the group mind, by mob mentality, by the influence of the crowd? And I think the lesson for us, there's lots of lessons obviously, but I think the lesson for us today is it's sometimes difficult to know when you're being influenced by the group. That's one of the results of all the studies, is that people who have been influenced by a mob mentality and done things they wouldn't normally do, when they look back on it, they would say something like, "I didn't even realize that I was doing what I was doing because we were all caught up in this thing together, and it was something I normally wouldn't do." And so I wonder if David, who was the hero, if he would have been there at the beginning, would he have been caught up in that? And the lesson for us, well, you might be being influenced by a group, by people, by the mob, by a crowd, and not even know it. And maybe you're missing some victory in life because you're so influenced by that. And so it's difficult for us to see it. It's difficult for us to see when we're being influenced by group thinking and mob mentality. So it's important that we analyze our lives and we look and we say, okay, who is influencing me? Where am I spending the most of my time, especially my free time? Who has a voice in my head? For a lot of us, it's our little pocket computers and social media. A lot of us are so influenced by Twitter and TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things. However, we are all influenced by them, and it is easy to get caught up in and sucked into things that we normally wouldn't do because we're just part of the crowd. I've always felt uncomfortable being part of the crowd. It's just something God has wired into me. I think it's helped me to not be influenced by the masses, by people. And one of the things that you have to do to avoid being influenced by the crowds, people that want to just influence you and speak into your life, is you have to practice one of the songs that David wrote. He wrote a song, and one of the lyrics goes like this: "Be still and know that I'm God." And that phrase, "be still," can be translated just block out the noise. There are times in your life when you're going to have to block out the noise if you want to know what God is up to, and if you want to know what God needs you to do. And to block out the noise for you might mean to take a day off. To block out the noise for you might mean push delete on the app. To block out the noise for you might mean go to the mountains and get away by yourself. I don't know what it means for you. But if you're ever going to defeat your giants, you're going to have to stop listening to people who say you can't. Mob mentality will rule your life if you let it. So the way you counteract that, the way you fight that, is to be still, block out the noise, and know who God is. I hope you can do that today. See ya.